Okay, what I want to concentrate on tonight is the concept of a new heaven and a new earth. It is almost impossible to overemphasize what a radical change that adds to our thinking. It is so ingrained in Christian theology to talk about going to heaven that it is difficult to get people to stop and think about what the Bible really teaches. And so I'm going to concentrate on that aspect of it. The first time a new heaven and a new earth are mentioned in those terms biblically is in the 65th and 66th chapters of the book of Isaiah. And he talks about there will be a new heaven and a new earth. And he emphasizes the radical nature of that by talking about children can play with snakes and be safe. The lion and the lamb will lie down together. In other words, Isaiah is trying to tell the people of his day that the final culmination of the plan of God is to return to the situation on the seventh day of creation. Now that's my own way to explain it. Remember, God made the heavens and the earth, and the earth was visualized by him as a temple in which he placed what? What?
Adam and Eve of the garden?
No.
Adam and Eve in the garden?
Yeah, no, but what did he place? What do you place in the temple?
The people, the saints. People?
No. Image. He placed his image.
His image, oh, okay.
And who was his image? Adam and Eve. Now don't leave Eve out of that.
For sure.
Yeah, because it says he created man in his image. Male and female created he them. And I have read that passage to people and asked them, what does the image of God consist of? And they'll come back and say Adam. It doesn't say that, folks. It says Adam and Eve, male and female. Okay? It takes femaleness, to let me coin a phrase that I don't even think's in the English dictionary. It takes femaleness to encompass the image of God. He is neither male nor female, contrary to what a lot of people think. He transcends gender. He is in one sense genderless, and in one sense he's all genders. Logically, both statements are the same thing. Okay, so he places his image in the new heaven, in the earth, but his image betrays him. And that's the reason he has to send them out into a world that's cursed. Now, keep that word cursed in mind, because we're going to deal with it tonight. But you find the idea of being part of a new creation in Romans 8, where the whole creation was subjected to emptiness. I translated it meaninglessness, which is what I take the word vanity to mean, without meaning, purpose. but it will be that way only until the revelation of the true children of God, what Paul says there. And so he looks for a new creation. He does not use the term a new creation until he gets to 1 Corinthians 5:17, where he says, if any person is in Christ, they are a new creation. And it's the same word that, in a sense, when we become in that state that Paul calls in Christ, which is one of his unique contributions to theology, is we then are already participating in the new creation.
John uses the term abide.
Yes, yes. And Mike and I talked before class today about how John and Paul have the same theological concepts, but use different ways to describe them. And it's really an interesting study to notice that. Okay, then the new creation is mentioned in Peter, in 1 Peter, when he says, what's good? I'm going to paraphrase this. What's going on here? Why, things have been just like they've been since our 3 generations ago. See, by the time Peter wrote 1 Peter, they were into the 3rd generation of Christians, just like the writer of Hebrews was a 3rd generation believer. And the people to whom he wrote were 3rd generation believers. And they said, well, where's the promise of God? And he says, you don't understand. God is not slack. I can't remember how I translated it, but that's the King James. Not slack concerning his promises, as some count slackness. In other words, he's not slow to keep his promises, as some people count slowness, but said they forget that a day is 1,000 years and 1,000 years is a day. In other words, God's timetable just does not compute in human terms.
It's nonlinear.
Yeah, it's nonlinear. And it's one event after another, if you want to get some relativity in here, which I don't. But he says, but we look for and expect a new heaven and a new earth. So there you have it. You have Isaiah, you have Paul, you have Peter, and then you have the book of Revelation, where it clearly, I mean as clearly as it's possible to be. I challenge you to go home and open your Bible to the 65th and 66th chapter of Isaiah, and to the 21st and 22nd chapter of Revelation, and compare the two. And there can be no doubt that John is saying what Isaiah predicted has come to pass, but notice when it came to pass. After even death was thrown into the pit of fire. Remember? The last enemy will be what?
Death.
Death. And it's amazing how that theme is carried out. Jesus says much the same thing. John says it. Paul says it again and again, that the last enemy is death. And when death dies to be no more, then that's when the new heaven and the new earth. And remember, John saw a new heaven and a new earth, and the heavenly city coming down out of the sky. Most often, The word that we translate heaven should be translated sky or skies. In Matthew, where it says the kingdom of heaven in the King James, it's the kingdom of the heavens, plural in every case, no exceptions. And that means just the skies. It's to avoid using the name of God. The skies were considered pure and above the turmoil and chaos of the earth. And so it's the kingdom of the skies. Now, when time is no more and death has been cast into the lake that burns with fire, then there's a new heaven. And a new earth and a new heaven, a new sky. And coming down out of the sky is the city of God. Now, we spent quite a bit of time last week on the description of the city of God. Now, one of the things about this, it sounds a lot like, when you're measuring the city of God, sounds a lot like Ezekiel measuring the temple. And see, there are people today that expect the temple to be rebuilt in Jerusalem. That's not going to happen. There will be a temple on earth. No, there won't be a temple on earth. Not in any meaningful sense, because the new city does not have a temple. In a sense, the new city is the temple. I mean, you can, just like it was to begin with, the whole earth will be the temple of God. And who will be dwelling in it?
The image.
The image of God. Just like my old teacher that I keep telling about at ACU. First time I ever had a college level Bible class. And he opened by saying, the Bible starts with man and God in a garden together. It ends with man and God in a garden together. I was not even beginning to know enough about what he was talking about to even understand what a magnificent view that was. It took me 30 years, just about 30 years. Not quite, but 25 anyway. And I started teaching while I was at Oak Hills in the 70s, a new heaven and a new earth. And I had people look at me as if I were cross-eyed and had two horns. Or three. And what?
And a bushy tail.
Yeah. And so, but it's true. And it was so obvious that I couldn't understand why people had such a difficulty. But it's because they have been conditioned. And to uncondition people is very difficult. And I did not think that was my primary mission on earth. So when I had a chance to talk about it in context, I talked about it. That's been my way of trying to change people all my life. I do not nag, because all you do is make people uncomfortable and unhappy. But if you are patient and you teach good teaching, guess what will happen? Eventually, the people that are in the elect, shall I say, will get it, and the others won't. Jesus had the same problem. How many times did he say the same thing in different ways? And how I always think about the picture of his ascension. The last words he heard were his own appointed apostle saying, "Are you going to establish the kingdom now, Lord?" That's the last word he heard. And he had spent his whole public life telling them something different, that his kingdom was not of this world. But they missed it until they were filled with the Spirit. But that's a different lesson. Okay, so we have this heavenly city coming down. It does not have a temple because it is, as I say, in the temple of the new creation, the new earth. And it is peopled by two groups of people. Those who followed the Lamb, and the Lamb and his Father. Now that's where we take up here in the 22nd chapter. Then the angel showed me the river of the water of life. The river was shining like a crystal. It flowed from the throne of God and the Lamb. It flowed down the middle of the wide street of the city. Now I told you about the Cardo, which had been excavated between the time we were there in 1978 in Jerusalem and in 1990. At the time we were there in 1978, nobody even knew about the Cardo. They should have, because there was a map of Jerusalem in a mosaic on one of the Byzantine churches in that area, showed a map of Jerusalem with a broad avenue running from east to west, from the east gate to a gate in the west. And it is a wide boulevard, an avenue with dividers in between it. On each side of it were colonnades of merchants and stores and things like that. And I cannot help but think that when John sees a picture of the broad street that runs through this New Jerusalem, he is thinking about the Cardo. You'll find commentators that wonder why he talked about a big wide street, because they wrote all of their commentaries before the excavation of that, because it was only excavated in the late 80s, not more than a year or two before we visited there in 1990. So it was a brand new thing. But there it is. See, it's a new Jerusalem, but it's got some of the landmarks, let's say.
Familiar characteristics.
Yeah, familiar characteristics. But the thing that's here is the wideness, the beauty. And instead of having a kind of dividers between the two,
Like a median.
yeah, like a median, it's got the water of the river of life running down it. Isn't that a beautiful picture? Imagine, and it's as clear as crystal. Now, you wouldn't get water running down a street in Jerusalem in the first century that was as clear as crystal.
It's a gutter.
Yes, it'd be more like gutter. But that's, can you see that picture? It's the paradise. And paradise is a Persian word for garden. When it says the paradise of Eden or the Garden of Eden, it's the paradise, whatever the construct case of Eden is in Hebrew, which I can't remember. I used to know. And That's what he visualized here. A beautiful garden. It goes ahead to say, the tree of life was growing on both sides of the river. Now, that means it was available. It wasn't, notice, why did God chase Adam and Eve out of the garden? To keep them away from what? The tree of life. Because if you eat of the tree of life, you have unending life. Not eternal, because the word eternal means a kind or quality of life. It is the life suitable for the age to come. But what we're seeing is a description of the age to come, the new heaven and the new earth. It bore 12 kinds of fruit, one for each month of the year. The leaves of the tree were for the healing of all people. Now, notice, the promise in the Old Testament is, I will heal all of your diseases. Now, when Jesus was the kingdom of God, just a minute, was the kingdom of God on earth, what did he do? He healed. It wasn't accidental that he healed. This was in fulfillment of the promise of the Messianic age. Okay.
I got two questions. It talks about months, and over there is no concept already of months or dates or anything like that, because it's...
Yes, they had months. The Jewish calendar was a calendar that had 12 30-day months. And then,
I'm referring in heaven. In heaven.
oh, well, in heaven, I see what you're getting at. I didn't know. Actually, this is symbolic language. It is for all time. Just think of it, not just for 12 months. It's there available. We will always have the availability of eating that which will produce real life.
In this earth, we have seasons when there is fruit and seasons when there's not.
That's right, but there won't be any seasons. That's a good idea. It's a good, thank you, Jesse.
The other question is that healing, which we read back where it says there's no more tears, no more suffering, no more healing of any diseases,
Well,
of any
Okay,
illness or anything of that
yes.
sort.
See, this again is symbolic. That is, it's just emphasizing the fact that there is no more disease. But what I think is going on here, now let me tell you why I think they use this image, John uses this imagery, is it is the restoration of what God had in mind when he made the first heaven and the first earth. See, it is the restoration of that situation. God is not going to allow the rebellion of human beings to keep him from having the world he wanted to have. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
See, in that sense, it's restoring what was lost. Now, we're going to get to a phrase here in a minute.
I've seen the idea here basically in the garden with Adam and Eve. They were given food, nourishment, even though they had bodies that could take it in, and they didn't necessarily need to have that except for the tree of life to have an ongoing life.
I don't know that. You don't either.
Again, if these again,
Yeah.
I think we're going to have, just like Adam and Eve did then, a reestablishment of things to do and in order
Okay.
and things like
Now,
that.
I'll tell you what. It's so easy to read into this whatever it is that you want it to be.
Just trying to understand.
Yes, yeah. And I'm not sure that that's a bad thing to do unless you make that and say, well, that's what it teaches.
Yeah.
Now, see, you have to be careful there. It teaches one thing, but it may have different significances. To me, what I hope it is, and I don't make any bones about this, I'd like for it to be where if you want to learn something, you can. Now, that tells you more about me than it does about the text of the scriptures.
I see it as just discovering more who God is.
Yeah, well, that's one way to put it. Now, I think, well, let's go on.
Okay.
Every one of these little phrases here has significance, and that's why I want to bring them out. He says, nothing God has cursed will be there. Now, what would include, we sing a Christmas carol. Far as the curse is found.
The earth has been cursed.
What?
The earth has been cursed.
The earth has been, right. And thorns and thistles and things, negative things like that.
Bad bugs.
And see, nothing. Now, he has also cursed the disobedient. Now, cursed here doesn't mean he says bad words over them. It just means the consequences are bad. And so, this goes back to probably in the Deuteronomic curses, when you blessed are these and cursed are these, or when Joshua has the people on. Did you? Okay, I always watch for people's hands and everything, and so you have here that this is a total undoing of the curse God placed upon the first creation. That's the theological point that's made here. It's a total undoing of that curse, which included what? Death. Remember, we have that idea that death has been overcome. And that was the last curse that will be overcome by the Messiah. It all fits together. I want you to leave this class with the idea that Revelation is not some kind of strange tail on the dog. It is a suitable finish of the whole revelation of God from Genesis on. And it is the culmination of God's work of redemption. I know that some of you in the Women of the Word class have been studying that idea of what was cursed and what happened and all. And this will include everything that was wrong because men and women sinned. All that will be undone, and the earth and the heavens will be like they came from the mouth of God, and He spoke them into existence. That's the idea of a new heaven and a new earth.
It'll be very good again.
Yes, He will look at it and say, it is very good. He said that, and then it was marred, but God will not allow His creation to be marred. He has redeemed it, redeemed the whole creation. It's not just redeemed the souls of human beings. He has redeemed the whole creation. This is what Paul is trying to get over, especially in Ephesians and Colossians. It's called the cosmic work of Christ. What He did on the cross undid the cosmic results of sin. Everything that sin brought into the world, He potentially undid on the cross. And now that promise of the cross John sees fulfilled in a new heaven and a new earth. Isn't that a beautiful idea? Doesn't that make you long to participate? I hope it does. That I see smiles on your faces, and that's exactly what I hope to see. And I think we have liberty. Again, I'm going to be very circumspect how I say this, Jesse. I think we have liberty to interpret that in ways that are satisfactory to ourselves, as long as we recognize the interpretation is coming from us and not from the text. I think it's perfectly right to kind of poetically apply these things personally.
It's going to be more than we can.
Yes, Paul said it's more than you can imagine.
But it's nice imagining.
Yeah, you can't even imagine how good it's going to be. So I think that lets us imagine.
Just even more surprising
Yeah,
to see it.
yes. So I have some biblical warrant for the idea that we can have warrant to imagine what it's going to be like. And I do that sometimes. I do it sometimes when I need to. When the world, to use, was it Robert Browning that said the world is too much with us? I think it was Robert Browning. Anybody know? Anybody remember English 101 or something? Anyway, I think it was Browning that said the world is too much with us. And that happens, doesn't it? We get our belly full of the world, or I do, and I suspect you do too. It can be in any kind of context that can happen, I think.
I think God wants us to be excited about
I'm-
going there. It's kind of like a kid who's never been to Disney World, just imagining what's going on. You know, we have that as part of our nature and makeup. And so when you read about heaven and you think about, as Jesse was saying, all the possibilities, I think God has a great time thinking about, hey, you know,
Yes.
you're thinking about it.
I think that's, thank you. You remember that last week I said one of the best visions of what the new Jerusalem will look like is that first picture that you see when Dorothy and her three companions in Toto first see the Emerald City. And I still think that is as good a image as you can have in your mind. You have that glowing golden emerald, pearl, everything. As Mike pointed out when we were talking before class tonight, it's like the vestments of the high priest. You think about that. And so, see, there's always that priestly, always that temple idea that's in behind all of this. Now, however, the throne of God will be there and his servants will worship him. That means they will have the proper awe of him. But the next line is the one that blows my mind. They will see his face. Are you aware of how radical that statement is? Why is it so radical? They don't die. Yes, the universal teaching of the Bible is that if you saw God's face, it would kill you because he would be so awesome and superior. But now the barrier is down. Now that's the really radical statement. We shall see God as he is. I cannot think but what John has in mind something he wrote in 1 John 3. When we see him, we will become like he is. See, the barrier is down not because of us, but because of him. We have become something, a being that can contemplate the face of God and
Adam
live.
and Eve again, they were able to.
Yeah, and live. And his name will be on their foreheads. That means that we will so belong to him that there's no barrier between us. This is a fulfillment of the hope of God when he said, I will be their people. I will be their God and they will be my people. We will belong to him. We will not be usurpers. We will belong there. And again, that's bordering on the almost unbelievable. But John is saying these things are facts. This is the way it's going to be. The angel said to me, night will no longer exist. People will not need the light of lamps or of the sun. This is because God will give them light. They will reign throughout the age to come. That's it. We will reign with God, and if you want to say forever and ever, I remember teaching the book of Revelation and bringing my copy, my old 8-track tapes. You know how long ago that was. 8-track tapes of the Hallelujah Chorus. Because that section of the Handel's Messiah is taken from the King James translation of the book of Revelation. It's right there. They will reign throughout the age to come. The angel said to me, these words are true and trustworthy. The Lord of the spirits of the prophets. Now, the Lord of the spirits of the prophets. The Lord God of the spirits of the prophets. That means the spirit, this is plural, as the word spirit almost always is in the book of Revelation. We talked about that from the first vision that John had. It's the Holy Spirit. The Lord of the prophets has sent his angel to show what must shortly happen. Now, this has worried people to death, just like it worried Peter's hearers when he wrote 1 Peter 3, is shortly for God is longly for us. Remember, it took 400 years for God to make a great nation. It took more than that. It took 440 years for him to make a great nation out of the descendants of Abraham. And God's time and our time just are not commensurate. So keep that in mind. But as I never grow tired of pointing out, each one of us has only the time of our lives to wait. Now, I don't know. We talk about what's going to happen to people between the time they die and the time of the general resurrection. It may not anything happen in that time. It may just be one into another. I don't know. And I have never seen anybody that does know. And I've heard a lot of sermons on it.
Speculation.
And I always want to say, how do you know that? Because I don't. I don't mind admitting my ignorance. where I'm genuinely ignorant, and I am there. Okay. Take note, I am coming soon. Now, this is extremely difficult to punctuate. I know. This has to be Jesus. And yet it is not in any form of a direct quotation. When I do, God will bless those who hold fast to the prophetic words of this book. Now, notice I put quotation marks at the end of that, and I need to go back and put them at the beginning. At the beginning. It's just, that's one of the things I'm working on, Steve.
So in other words,
Can I give you a suggestion?
Yeah.
It's a parenthetical expression.
I think you're right. That's the way I took it. And what I think I may do is put that in a separate paragraph and put quotation marks
You're
right.
in good company.
Yes, okay. Thank you. I, John, am the one who heard and saw these things. When I heard and seen them, oh my goodness. Can't even.
Said had heard and seen.
Yes, it should be had heard and seen.
Well, that's what you have.
What?
so that's what you have here.
Yes, only I don't repeat the had. I bowed low before the angel who showed them to me. But the angel said, "Don't do that. I am a fellow servant with you and your fellow servants, the prophets, and those who hold fast to the words of this book. Worship God alone." Now, we've already seen that happen. But John is kind of, it's almost as if John were loath to close the book. It's been such a great spiritual experience for this old man that he is close to being overwhelmed by it. And the vision of the new heaven and the new earth. Here's a man in his 90s that knows he doesn't have much more time before he will go and be with his beloved Lord. So he's almost like he just doesn't know how to quite bring it to a close.
Do you remember that Daniel, after his visions and such, was kind of like worn out?
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of the same idea here, I think, too.
Well, one thing I've learned about translating the Gospels is that it took energy out of Jesus to heal people. That becomes very clear. Okay. Then he said to me, "Don't seal up the prophetic words of this book, because they're about to happen. Those who are doing evil, let them continue to do so. Whoever is doing right, let them continue to do so." Now, this is difficult to translate too and interpret. What he's saying is, this book is not going to change people. Now, God is pretty realistic on that. So he's saying, don't seal it up, give them a chance, but there's people that are going to just continue to do what they're doing.
Kind of reminds me of when Jesus said about the rich man to Lazarus. He says, they have the prophets,
Yeah.
to go. You don't have to go back to them.
Yep,
They
okay.
won't even believe at that.
All right. Whoever is dedicated to God, let them continue to be dedicated to Him. That is, John doesn't have any great expectation of changing the way of the world. This book was written to comfort people. It wasn't written to change people. Now, the gospel was preached to change people, and it still is preached to change people. That's what about the rich man. If they won't listen to somebody who came back from the dead, then they won't listen.
Yeah, that's not what's referred.
Yeah, see. All right. Take note, I'm coming soon. I will bring rewards with me. I will give them to each person according to what they have done. Now, we've talked about that. That is the basis upon which we will be given a reward or not a reward. Now, this has nothing to do with our basic salvation from death and our basic living in the new heaven and the new earth. It has to do with whether we exceed the minimum. And Paul talks about that in 1 Corinthians 3. And he talks about, if the work you build on the foundation of Christ is good, solid work, then it will be tested by fire, and you will get a reward. But the idea of reward is repugnant to some people, but it is not to me. You don't get a reward for loving Christ, but you get a reward for doing extraordinary service.
The martyrs.
Yes, and the martyrs are the ones especially, I think, that John has in mind here. I began everything, and I will bring everything to its intended end. Now, I took a little liberty in that translation, but I think it's exactly what he's talking about. That this is Christ talking, and he brought them to its intended end. This is the beginning and the end idea. And that is also, could be God the Father talking. It's hard to make a distinction here, and you be very careful about how you do.
Is there even a need to make a distinction, though?
No, there isn't. Okay. God will bless those who have washed their robes. Now, the people have added to this sentence. You've got textual additions to it, because usually it's washed their robes in the blood of the Lamb. But that's not here. It just says those who've washed their robes. That is, those who have that clean white linen on. The ones with the wedding garment, if you want to use the idea there. He will give them the right to eat from the tree of life and to enter the city by its gates. Outside the city are the evil people, those who practice witchcraft, who sin sexually, who murder, and who love and tell lies. Now, there won't be anybody outside the city. But John is trying to tell us nothing bad will be in the city. And if outside the city, there just won't be anything. But it will, as it were, it will be those who are guilty of they'll be the ones thrown into the pit of fire.
Going back to the beginning and the end, why was a finite concept used when God is an infinite concept?
Because no ancient people knew what to do with infinity. They just, in fact, some of the proofs in Aristotelian logic depend on saying that would be infinity, and infinity can't exist. They didn't really think that infinity could exist. And there's still, if you want to blow your brain out, and I'm not talking about with a gun, I'm talking about, there is a book called Infinity and Mind. I've read it at least 10 times. I understand a little more of it every time I read it. But I still haven't gotten through about where I can understand more than about 5 out of the 10 chapters of it now. and you can get into some transfinite calculus. And you'll know why the ancients didn't deal with infinity.
They were smart.
They were smart, yes. Wise. What?
That sounds exciting.
Tran-
Finite calculus.
Yes?
That
Fellow-
brings back a lot of calculus.
Yeah.
memories.
Yeah. A man named Cantor was the originator of transfinite
What was
calculus.
the name of the book, Charles?
Infinity in mind.
Infinity in Mind.
Okay. I, Jesus, have sent my angel to testify to these things to the churches. I am the root and descendant of David. I am the bright and morning star. The Spirit and the bride say, come. Everyone who is listening. Now, listening here are the people who are hearing this read to them. Everyone who is listening should say, come. If anyone is thirsty, they should come and receive the gift of living water. I am the witness to the prophetic words of this book. If anyone should add to them, God will add to them the plagues written in it. However, if anyone should take away from them, God will take away their share in the tree of life and in the city of God, which are described in this book. The witness to these things says, yes, I am coming quickly. Amen. Come quickly, Lord Jesus. May the grace of the Lord Jesus be with you all. That's the book of Revelation. Thank you for your attention, your interest, and your consistent attendance. It is heartening to teach people who want to be taught. There is no greater reward on this earth than that. That's the reason God put me here, is to teach people who wanted to know. And you have fulfilled that gloriously and completely, as far as I'm concerned. Thank you. Thank you.
Charles, it was William Wadsworth.
What?
William Wadsworth who said.
Oh, that's right. Lines written above Tintern Abbey.